let me go ahead and just jump right into it here. So you probably have seen this file set. I just grabbed any file set for this demonstration because really the models don't matter. It's going to be the same thing, the same process, no matter what you're using for your published content. So this is our standard demo file set, the Hamaltro Jaws of Life. And as you can see in my views, I've set these up, or these have been set up in a step-by-step fashion to create these like step-by-step assembly instructions. So if I wanted to give my customer the ability to view this content online, I could host this file on my website and have anybody in the world visit the website and be able to see exactly what we're seeing right now as far as rotating, the animation, the step-by-step. If we click here, if you guys are familiar with animation mode within Composer, we had animation timelines. So if we had animation on this in this SMG file, that would actually display in the animation or in the HTML as well. Let me go ahead and I'm just going to drag a couple of these views down here just to start the animation, just to show once we actually publish that HTML that the animation will be there. So I'll go and bring those down there and show that when it's time. Okay, so just like in 2011, once you have your completed project, you go up to File, you go to Publish, and HTML. So new in 2012, when we go to this HTML output, you'll see these really cool looking templates. Now these templates, I don't actually recommend using them. I recommend using the simple template and then tweaking it and using your tweaked version from there on out. This is a very good idea, what Composer and SOLIDWORKS have come up with for these automatic HTML outputs, but it's not something that I personally recommend using for right now. And the reason for that is all of these, even the simple, has the Player Pro information embedded into it. And what Player Pro is 3D Via Composer also has a player. So that's a free player. Anybody can download it. Anybody can use it. But the Player Pro is $500 currently, a license. And so it's a purchase product. And if you create a website using that requires the Player Pro, then everybody who views the website has to own Player Pro. So if you create a website and host it online with that Player Pro information in there, anybody who wants to access it would need to pay for that application to actually view your website. So you can see why I don't recommend using these. With that said, you can use them and then remove the Player Pro functionality. And what Player Pro gives you is basically the ability, if you are going to communicate design like across overseas and you can host your file, then whoever's viewing it could go in there, they could poke around, they can make small changes as far as creating views, markups, annotations, and then they would actually be able to save that, and then you would see their changes on your end. So in this webinar we won't be going over that portion of it. We'll actually be going over how to strip that out so anybody can view your website. That's more like a public website creation. So for this purpose, I'm going to choose simple, and then I'm going to go back in and modify that. Down here you'll see the ActiveX 64-bit version cab file. So when you create a HTML, when you publish an HTML, it incorporates this cab file right into the structure of the HTML file structure. And it's great because when it creates this, then you host that in your website, and anybody who goes in it will automatically download, it will install, it's an ActiveX control, and they'll be able to view it. So they'll be able to view your website without ever viewing a 3D model in the past, without ever having to download the player or anything like that. The 64-bit cab file, for right now, I'd say don't click that because you're going to experience issues with customers that are running 32-bit machines. Right now, 32-bit cab files default, and it works great because 64-bit computers can also view the 32-bit cab file. So go ahead and just ignore that for right now. All right, let's go down to the Write Manager. So here you have a little bit of control how you want your publication to appear, but really you can basically use all of these controls outside of the Write Manager as well. So with the save, you see the little asterisks there? That's only available in Player Pro, so just make sure you don't click that one. The rest of these really don't matter that much because we can actually tweak it in the HTML afterwards. But you know, these are going to show things that are going to appear in your final publication. Let's just go ahead and use the default settings. And so I'm using the HTML simple. It's the only change I made. Keep in mind you could also put your signature in here. You could add a password for security. You can control your automatic animation speed. So there's a lot of options in here, and just, you know, they're pretty self-explanatory. But here for the HTML folder, I just created a folder in my desktop here, and I'm just going to go ahead and save the HTML. So back in 2011, you could not choose what template to use. It was a default template. It just used what it used. It published this out, and it actually, all it did was very, very simplified. Back in 2011 and previous, when you'd come into this folder where I just saved this, you would have a HTML, and you would have your folder with your SMG file in there. New in 2012, it no longer saves as an SMG file. If I go into the folder that originally would be an SMG file, it's actually referred to as an SMG XML. And so the difference between an SMG file and an SMG XML is an SMG is all of the files incorporated with an XML packaged, almost into like a zip file kind of package, where the XML is that package exploded. For instance, let me show you an example of this. So here I have let me go and shut this down. I have this SMG file that I'm using to create this HTML. If I were to rename that, and this is just a little trick, I don't really recommend doing this, it's just more to explain what's going on here. If I rename it, let's say RER, so now it's a RAR file, so it's a package. I can double click and open it. See all the files in there? So all of these files are actually inside that SMG file. If you look over here in this folder, there's the same file. So all Composer's doing is taking that SMG and like extracting it to this folder. Now when it does that, now you have all the files associated with the SMG that you can reference independently. So you have all these thumbnail images that if we wanted to use that throughout our website, different view images, and then also, you know, there's also these source files. And if you are a webmaster, this might be helpful. Let me go and see if I can open it here. I'm not saying my open with. That's fine. I'll just go to Notepad and then drag and drop it in there. You'll see this actually controls all the information of what this site is actually doing, how the SMG is behaving. To be honest, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Just know it's there if this is something you're into. For this webinar, we're not even going to touch this. So that's just the explanation, the difference between an SMG file and this SMG XML. Now with that said, even though 2012 utilizes the SMG XML and it busts that all out, you can still use an SMG file. So let's say that you use an SMG for your standard practice. You're using SMGs, you know, in the shop, you know, in design. Now when you publish an XML, it publishes this SMG XML. Now you have two sources of information. You got your SMG file, and you have all these SMG XMLs. So what I actually prefer doing is to delete these, drag and drop the SMG file into here. That way you're just using one file. Of course, you'd probably want an archive of that just for backup purposes. And then we can actually modify the HTML to point to that SMG file instead of pointing to this SMG XML. So it's really a personal preference. I'll show you both methods here. So first thing to do, I'm just going to go. I haven't tweaked anything yet, by the way. I've just published this and shown you guys what files are in here. This HTML, if I were to open that, this is what you're going to get. So as you can see, the rendering of this is kind of off. There's no views. Even though I rendered this with lines, there's no lines associated with it. And we can come in here, we can turn on the standard toolbars, and we can do several things within here, as far as like playing the steps of the process and whatnot. But really, I want to make this a bit better. So, and this is where this webinar comes into play, where actually I'll show you how to fix this. So the first thing is this HTML file. If I right click and open it, I'm going to go ahead and open it with Notepad. And if you view it full screen, it's a mess, right? It's the way that this was created, to be totally honest, is, you know, it's sloppy, but we can fix it. And we can fix it rather easily. If you just expand it, just kind of keep it minimized but expand. You can control the width, you can see how your values start coming together here just by kind of dragging that in. And by the way, you know, like I said, this will be recorded on our website, so you'll be able to view this. If you're taking notes, great. If not, you'll have the video afterwards. And then we have all these values we can adjust. See this param name, these values right here? This is really the only thing you need to modify within this HTML, and they're easy to modify. Of course, everything else, if you're savvy with HTML, you know, go at it. Have, you know, create a little sandbox area and just play around with the options, and you can totally create the custom HTML right within here. And you'd probably be using something rather than the Notepad. But for this purpose, we're just going to be modifying values from 0 to 1. 0 means off, and 1 means on. So right here when it says, it's typically 1 and 0 are off, unless there's different kind of modes, and then it might be like 1 through 10. So this render mode value 0, render mode value 0 means that it's going to be shaded without lines. If you want shaded with lines visible, edges, make that a 1, and then you'll get that. This, if we go down to, let's go down to show view toolbar. So the show view bar, that's going to be views on the left pane. When you have your project finished and you want to go through the different views that you've created, as you can see, when I published the last one, those views weren't even available. Sometimes you want to show them, sometimes you don't. I'll go back into the SMG and make a little tweak and show when you would not want to show them. But for right now, I would like to show them here, so I'm going to say 1. Marker bar, let's go ahead and say that 0. What the marker bar is part of the animation. Any of the markers, when you drag and drop the views down there, it would display at the bottom. Really have no reason to show that in this one, so I'm going to leave it at 0. Standard toolbar, let's go ahead and show it all the time. I like that one. Timeline bar, that's for our animation. If that's turned on, you'll actually be able to adjust the position and time of the animation that you're currently looking at. Main 3D toolbar, sure, let's have that on. Collaboration bar, really don't need that. That's our two-dimensional actors. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and close that, save it, and now when we view it, notice some changes. Got our views on the left here. So I can go ahead and cycle through the different views. We have our standard animation bar up here. Remember when I dragged and dropped these different views onto the timeline? It actually started creating that animation. So I can go ahead and scroll through the animation right now, exactly what I created. Keep in mind too that you can see the lines now that I've changed that. Up here in the standard toolbar, if you hit play here, so this play button, stop buttons, fast forward buttons play through the views. These guys on the right play the animation. Because remember in Composer there's 2 different environments there. You can create steps of the views, and then you can also create the timeline animation. So this controls the timeline animation. If I hit play there, these guys here, if I hit play, it's just going to jump from view to view to view. And it'll actually even play this view what's named view 1 down here, which is the line drawings. So if I just let that play, you'll see that. And then I'm also going to go in, because I'm not a big fan of the SMG XMLs. I don't utilize all those other components. There's the other view. The other components that are broken out. I mean, if you would like to utilize them, then of course, by all means, use the XML. But for my purposes, I don't. And to me, it's just a little bit clunky, because you go into this folder and you got all these files, and it's a lot to deal with. You know, if you're using some kind of archiving system or something, it's just more files that need to be saved. So what I do is delete these. I'm just going to go ahead and wipe them out. The folder doesn't need to be there, or the files don't need to be there. Now this file, this folder, see I'm in the HTML folder, I can copy this, put it anywhere, and call it like HTML template. And I never have to publish out of Composer 2012 again. You just need to publish once out of each version of 3dVA Composer. And the only reason why you have to one time from each version, like 2013 comes out, you'll have to do this again, is because this ActiveX cab file is created with the new version. So this ActiveX player is the 2012 player. So if I was using a 2011 template with 2012 SMG file, it's not going to be compatible. So you just publish it once, go in here, make these tweaks that I'm making, and then later on down the road, if I want to bring in another SMG, let's go ahead and say I want to bring in this SMG here. It's going to be called, you know, ABC, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and put that into this folder. And now if I go into the HTML and modify that, I'm just going to do a Control F for find, and I'm going to search for .smg XML. And you can see where it found right here. I'm going to expand this out a little bit so we can see the whole file name. There we go. So the file it found is this 4240 spreader instructions SMG XML. That was the old XML that was in there. My new one is called abc.smg. Remember, I just copied the SMG, so it's not unpackaged. So if you wanted to, you could open that up, save as SMG XML, go down here, just rename the name. If you wanted it to instead refer to the SMG file, if you're not going to use those other files, then you save it as an SMG like I have here. Inside the HTML, I'm just going to rename it. So it's going to be ABC. Instead of SMG or XML, it's just going to be SMG. So I'm going to delete the XML. And so now this HTML is referencing this file. Save and close that. And now when I open this up, you'll see it's going to retain all of my settings that I adjusted. But now it's going to be referencing the SMG file. And one other little thing to point out is I didn't really bring attention to it in the last one, but the coloring is better now. And I think that's a bug on my machine. I haven't seen that on other computers, why the XML comes through without that shading. It's something that's kind of escaping me. So another reason why I save out the SMG instead of the SMG XML is to have this better coloring scheme. That's something you may or may not see. If you do see it, a good solution for that is to reference the SMG instead of the SMG XML. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to have a couple other little examples to show of ways to produce this and different tweaks we can do to it. Before I go into that, I like to pull up how you actually strip the Player Pro from this file. Because right now you can see I can open this and it opens fine. If you were to open this, if I was to host this on our website and you were to open it and you don't have Player Pro, it would open fine for you as well. But if you click and rotate, it would rotate, but you would also get this little box that pops up that says this file requires Player Pro. Even though it allows you to work within it, it would still pop up and say that. It's like a little embedded the HTML thing that's just kind of annoying. And if you want to remove that, which no doubt you would like to remove that, the way you do that, and I created this text file to show, that way when you view this video later, you can freeze it here and you can see exactly how to do this. And I'll go ahead and go through this here in a second. I'll just leave this here for about 5 seconds here. Okay, so to do that, we go into resources. We're going to go into the JS file, and this template right here is what's referencing that Player Pro. So I'm going to again open that with Notepad. And the lines I'd like to delete is this right here. It's about right in the middle of the document. And that says if is Player Pro. Let me just verify that 1 second. Make sure I'm right here. If is Player Pro, yep. And I just want to delete all 5 of these lines. So that guy, that, and that. No reason to have it. Let me go ahead and get the spaces before that too. So this is saying that you know, it's referencing Player Pro. We'll go ahead and delete that. And now you'll see that there's really not any difference when we view it without those lines there. But now when you view it without Player Pro, you won't get that pop-up. But basically you get the same thing as you see right now. And that's how you remove that. Okay, now let me go ahead and show you guys a couple other just cool tricks. And I've shown these before in my previous webinars, but they really are associated with creating this HTML. And the reason behind them is that HTML. And that's these new buttons in 2012. If you go to, I'm just activate the first view here. If you go to Author and you go to Image 2D, drop that down, there's a Next and Previous button. So once you create these, then in the HTML, you don't have to have your views on the side. They'll just be optional at that point. So I'm going to say Next button, and then let's also say a Previous button. I'm going to select them both and go down just for the size, the width here. Tell them both to be 25. That just keeps them the same size. Drag and drop them down in the corners. And now with them here, I'm going to update the view. Then I'm going to select both of them. And then I'm going to shift select all of my views. And then hit this button right here for update views with selected actors. And it's going to go ahead and put all of those in all of my views. Now I'm simply going to save this document. This is the ABC SMG I've been creating. And, you know, if you don't have a template, of course you'd go to Publish HTML. I do have a template. So all I have to do, go into my template here, and just simply replace this file. Another way to do this would just be to have this file here. This file wouldn't even exist. This one in a different folder, and you'd just be modifying the source file. Now, you know, depending on who you talk to, that's a better workaround or a worse workaround. I like one source of information. That way you don't have outdated documents. But if you have a good structure in place that makes sure that documents are updated, it's not a bad idea, I get sometimes, to have a version outside of what's on the website. That way, if you mess something up, you don't lose it. So an archive system of some sort, or have your design area and then your publish area. That's what I have set up here, is a design area and then a publish area. I'm going to go and replace it. I'm going to go ahead and view that HTML. And now we have these buttons. Oh, yes, I'm glad I did this. First thing to point out is you don't see the buttons, right? When you open up an SMG, it actually by default references the first frame of the animation. So that's why you're not seeing the buttons here. I'm not actually having a view active. And I'll have to go back and to the HTML and make sure that this view tab doesn't pop up. So it's a good thing to point out here. So what I always do, and you might have seen these in some of my my past presentations, but if you go, I'll just go and edit this one direct. I'm going to go ahead and open it. And my first frame of the animation, my timeline here, I'm going to create a button. So author, button, we'll see next, sure. It doesn't really matter what the button is. I just want a button that when somebody presses this, it's going to then go to the first view of the first frame of the animation. So the first thing I'll do is this. I have this button. So you can see that I can't add any events to it because it's actually attached to a style. It's subscribed to a style. So if you go home, I can actually unsubscribe that. And now if I go to my events, I can actually link that to something. And if that didn't make sense, you can create styles as like templates, and when you use those automatic buttons, it automatically uses a template, so it's like tied to that template. That template is saying that this button goes to the next view or the previous view. I want to break that rule and say it actually goes to the first view no matter what, and that's why I had to unsubscribe the style. Once it's unsubscribed, in the properties I can link that now to anything I want. A file, a website, you name it, you can do it. I'm going to go ahead and say a view, and I want to show the base view. Just like that. Oop, not create a second one there. And we'll save it. And now when I open up this instructions, then it will show that first frame. However, before I do that, let's open up with Notepad one last time. Of course, do my little trick here of just adjusting the size. And you get everything in a nice grouping here by doing that, so you can actually don't have to search for it through that mess. And let's go ahead and say view bar. Those are the views on the side. We'll say 0. We'll save it, open it up, and now it's not necessary to have those views on the side because we can use these next buttons to reference that. So this is the first frame of the actual animation, and we have a button here that says like start the process. All this is doing is referencing the first frame, the first view, and now I can say next, and it's going to jump from view to view. These buttons are subscribed to a style to say go to the next view, and so this also controls the user to have to go through the steps. You have a bunch of views on the side there, and you want them to go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It'd be very easy for them to go step 1, 2, 3, accidentally click on step 5 and jump to step 5 and totally skip step 4 and miss something. So using these buttons, you can see that basically I'm forced to go from step to step, and it's going to show all of the steps that I specified because I put these buttons in all of my views, all of my steps. If I excluded these buttons from a certain step, then once I got to that step, I couldn't go forward, I couldn't go backwards, so I'd want to move those to the bottom of the tree and not allow basically anybody to access them. And so you can actually have views that are kind of private that no one's going to be able to get to by using this method. And there we go. This is like the marketing image here. We'll take a second to create all the rendering styles. This one's really cool. We've got the depth of field, we've got the digger tool associated in there, and just a real high quality marketing image. And you can see that this view here doesn't have the lines visible. That's because this view is specifying that that no lines visible, where the other views are referencing the neutral properties, and the template chooses what that neutral property is. So that's the reason behind that. Okay, so just as a recap, once you create this template, then you have it, and you don't have to ever create it again. You can also come into here and you can say, this is called template. This folder here, when I renamed that, it broke the link here, so you'll also have to come into the edit the HTML and see you'll actually be referencing this template. You'll have to change it in the HTML, change it here. So it is a good idea to set up a template, maybe call this something more like SMG or something, something that is obvious what's inside there. So we have a template, it's referencing an SMG, and just to show that, I should have copied what that folder name was before, but basically it's in there, and you would rename it to, let me see if I can find it real quick here. File name, values, further instructions. Yeah, right there, I believe. This guy right here. And what did I call it? SMG. SMG ABC. Just like that. So we got SMG ABC template. Double click it just to make sure it works. And there we go.